Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video.
What is the most eerie thing that's ever happened to you?
Experience 1. I'm a medic and firefighter. We once had a call for something normal, like chest pain or something, I can't remember. The caller said he was in his barn/garage, which isn't weird really around here. Anyway, we pull up on the scene and something just felt off. No idea why, but something just told me in my gut that something was wrong. I decided to do a 360 around the building before we went through the door at the front, which was clearly the entrance. I walk around and come to a window on the side of the building and look in. There was a shotgun rigged to the door. The guy had set a booby trap for us. And he had hung himself as well. We kicked in this plexiglass type material on the side of the building and entered that way. Guy was dead. Nothing we could do about it at that point. I would have been the first through that door. No idea why I didn't just walk through it that day. I've posted this before, but I feel it's a decent story. Experience 2. I was driving home per usual and got this random, unwavering feeling that my house had been broken into. I kind of laughed and said, "Please don't let my house have actually been broken into," out loud as I turned the corner onto my street. The first thing I noticed when I pulled up to the house were the blinds on my bedroom window. They were yanked around and twisted up. Some guy that lives across the street turned out to have been stalking me and decided to climb through my bedroom window. He took nothing valuable. Just some weird personal items. It was terrifying to walk in and see my things rummaged through. It was even scarier when I talked to the neighbor and they admitted that multiple people in the neighborhood had seen it happen, but they were all too scared of the old dude to say anything. The weirdest part of it all, and I mean this guy took some creepy personal things, is that nagging feeling I had before I found the remnants of the break-in. I swear I knew before I knew, and that was such an eerie feeling. Experience 3. I was a manager of computer repair for a retailer a couple of years ago. We had a client's computer in the back running various malware and virus scans. I was doing morning paperwork in the back near the computer. This PC had its screensaver on displaying random photos from the My Pictures folder, various family members, children's birthday parties, the usual stuff. Then from the corner of my eye, I swear to God, I saw a picture of a woman from the shoulders up with her throat cut. As soon as I realized what I was making out, I directed my full attention, and it was back to photos of a car show. As the day went on, I thought nothing of it and proceeded to continue my work until I was bringing another customer's PC to the back to work on, and again from my peripheral, I could have sworn I saw a bloody body bound in a trunk of a car. At that moment, I began to freak out. I grabbed one of my employees and explained to him the situation. We then sat for 10 minutes and watched this screensaver. It is against company policy to search through the client's personal files without absolute just cause. We then proceeded to see a photo of 2 bodies in a shallow grave out in the woods and another photo of a severed hand down in a kitchen drawer. I then went and got the general manager and informed him of the situation and had him view this screensaver. We then felt that it would be in everyone's best interest to contact law enforcement. About 15 minutes later, owner of the computer and another gentleman show up. I proceed to tell him that his computer is not ready and that it will be a while. He then informs me that he was called there because someone reported there were some photographs of a grisly murder that we had found. I showed him his computer and then his partner then begins to laugh at him. Apparently, he went against police policy and took some of his work home with him and had never noticed his work photos were being used as a screensaver. Experience 4. This happened last year. I was having a recurring dream where I was in the woods at night. I noticed a campfire in the distance. Whoever was sitting at the fire noticed me and yells out, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" and starts moving towards me until I woke up. Late last summer, I decided to go out to the woods for a hike. Once I got out there, I needed to pee. I hopped off of the trail to get closer to the creek so I could take care of business and not worry about anyone walking up on me. As I approached the creek, I see a hidden shelter and a man setting up a campfire. When he noticed me, he said, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" Nothing else happened. I apologized and went on my way. It was the only time in my life that I had dreams of an event before it happened. I was pretty shaken at the time. Experience 5. When I was in middle school, I used to spend my free time playing on my Game Boy or listening to CDs in my room. It was a 3-family house. Most of my family, including my parents, sister, and I, lived on the top floor, while my grandmother lived alone on the second floor. My grandma used to take care of my sister and me while my parents were at work. She would frequently walk up the stairs at least twice a day to check on us. She wore loud wooden slippers in the house, so we could always hear her walking around on her floor, and especially when she was coming upstairs. One weekend, while I was alone at home with my grandma, I was sitting on my bed playing my Game Boy when I heard my grandma's unmistakable footsteps coming up the stairs. I heard her walking down the hallway and stopping in front of my door. I looked up to meet her gaze, but there was no one there. I felt startled and ran out of my room to check the hallway, kitchen, and stairs, but I couldn't find anyone else upstairs beside me. I found my grandma sitting downstairs on the couch watching television. Experience 6. I had one of those dreams that you couldn't wake up from. I knew I was asleep, and I was aware, but I couldn't wake up. I was absolutely terrified, thinking that I was stuck in a coma or something. I had a gun with me for some reason, and as the terror of not being able to wake up grew, I for some reason had a thought and belief that if I killed myself in the dream I would die in real life, and that was a better alternative than being in a coma. So, I brought the gun to my head and pulled the trigger. I physically felt pain in my temple and heard the shot. I woke up right afterwards. Experience 7. My ex and I lived in a remote part of northern Nevada. The house was literally in the middle of a field and our neighbors were far away. He worked nights and I never liked how dark and quiet it was. On the night he was working, I fell asleep and had a dream about him. In the dream, he was standing on the edge of a cliff, like the Grand Canyon, looking out at the view. I tried many times to get his attention, but he wouldn't acknowledge me. He was just staring straight ahead. After ignoring me for a while, he abruptly turned to me and grabbed the outside of my arms firmly. His face looked panicked, and he said, "Name, there's somebody in the house." Like in the movies, my eyes shot open, and I woke up with my blood running cold. I lay in bed silently, listening for any sound. I was even more terrified when the dog woke up almost immediately, started barking, and ran out his dog door, into the yard. What did he hear? I never saw or heard anything out of place. I couldn't see anything outside in the dark. The dog came back in and fell asleep. I stayed up the rest of the night, totally creeped out.
Do you like listening to these stories? Do you want to hear more of them? Then click that like button, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. And check the description for links to more videos and interesting stories.
Experience 8. One time my husband and I were lying in bed and the bottom drawer of his nightstand slammed shut. There was no logical explanation for why that happened, and we still don't understand to this day. Edited to add, I should clarify that we were both awake when this happened. We were just lying there reading and playing on our phones, and we both heard the drawer shut clear as day. My husband has a habit of keeping his lower drawer open, and we looked over and it was closed. Very weird. Experience 9. When I was 13 to 14 years old, some older boys threw rocks from a demolition site at me and my friend. One rock hit me in the face and knocked me down. I started bleeding profusely on the sidewalk and my friend was freaking out. We did not have cell phones since it was the 1990s and weren't near a payphone. An older man in his 50s or 60s stopped in a pickup truck and asked us to get in. My friend was like, "OMG," but I said, "No, let's get in, it's fine." This older man felt really trustworthy, but I didn't know why. My friend got in with me and he drove us straight to the hospital. The hospital took his name, my friend's, and mine when we got to the ER, and the man placed out. I had problems from the injury for 2 to 3 years, but I'm fine now, other than a small dent in my skull. My mom told me I should look him up in the phone book and call to thank him. There was exactly one name that matched his. It was an unusual name. I called it. The woman who picked up told me he had died 6 months earlier, but his physical description matched what both my friend and I recalled. I was able to look up his obituary and the photo matched his appearance. It was definitely eerie, and to this day, I don't really have any explanation for it. Experience 10. Years ago, I worked the late shift at a hospital, 4 p.m. midnight. My nightly drive home led me through back roads of fields and woods which often had low-hanging fog, particularly in early spring. I lived in a small town that has a lot of Civil War history. Ghost stories were so popular that area historians would do moonlight ghost walks where they searched for signs of restless spirits roaming the battlefield. The urban legend was that, in a war that pitted brother against brother, those soldiers who were killed by family became souls that were never at rest. I never bought into it, but one night under particularly dense fog did scare the ever-living crap out of me. At around 1 a.m., as I sped through curves and hills, I saw the outline of 2 figures walking along the side of the road. The closer I got, the more I slowed down as I didn't want to hit them or anything. By the time I passed them, I was going probably 10 miles per hour. First, I noticed their weirdly shaped hats. Then, the buttons on their jackets glimmered in my headlights. I swear to God, there were 2 Civil War soldiers walking in the fog in the moonlight. I could not breathe. The taller one, thin and gangly, looked up at my car and put his hand towards me. I hit the gas so hard. My transmission could barely keep up. I sped off into the night and, when I finally caught my breath, screamed several expletives. As I rounded another curve, I saw a small car, a Geo Metro, pulled over with lights flashing. Its hood was up and steam was coming from the engine. A man in Civil War garb stood close by staring at it with his hands on his hips. Damn reenactors were in town for some event and had car problems. To this day, I have no clue why they were out so late. About scared me to death. Experience 11. I grew up in a 2-family house. Me, my parents and siblings lived on one side, my grandmother on the other side. You're able to access my grandmother's side through a single door in the house. Once she passed away, I slowly took over her side since I was in high school and wanted my own space. One night I was walking to my room at the end of the hallway. There was a small mirror on the wall at the end. It was pretty dark, but I was still able to see. Right before I entered my room, I looked up into the mirror and saw my grandmother standing behind me. So terrifying since this was around 3 a.m. I had to leave the house and stay with my girlfriend. Experience 12. During a severe thunder/lightning storm one night, I was alone in the cathedral high up in the loft above the nave practicing the large pipe organ for a forthcoming recital. The flashing lightning illuminated the stained glass around the pipes with such intensity that it made the biblical characters seem to jump out of the windows and remain suspended in midair all around me, as if they had somehow come to life. Experience 13. Sleep paralysis. I've had 2 episodes in my life, but the first one will stick with me forever. My bed was in a corner of my room. My closet was in the opposite corner. No door in the closet, and it was stacked with a ton of junk, community storage for the household as I never used it. I wake up lying on my back, with the door in line of sight. I can see that it's full. But I can also see a hand slide out and grip the door frame. Pale and feminine. Followed by the slowly emerging frame of a very tall woman clad in a white, Victorian-era dress. She was almost pretty, aside from something in her face that wasn't quite right. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I remember being uneasy about it. For a while, probably about 15 minutes, she just stood there, talking to herself. I wasn't able to make out anything she said, but that's when the panic set in. I realized I couldn't move or speak, couldn't look away, and had no idea what was happening as I felt fully awake. Then she stopped, looked me in the eye and smiled, and the corners of her mouth pulled back to her ears. Terrifying. She started to approach and slowly opened her mouth so wide, her chin was touching where I'd estimate the bottom of her ribcage sat. It wasn't long before I could smell her rotten breath, and she began to crawl on top of me. The entire time, she was letting out this awful, multi-toned moan that sounded like 5 voices at once, all distorted. I could feel her weight resting on my chest. I couldn't breathe or scream as she inched closer. She put my entire head in her mouth, and I fully woke up when all I could see was darkness. I still get a bit panicky remembering that one. It felt so real. Experience 14. Had a manager where I worked who was taken from the register. He detested me because he suspected I knew what he was up to. He was right. I gathered proof of what he was doing. He fired me and tried to blame me for stock discrepancies. I went to my boss with proof of what he's been up to. My boss fired him and promoted me. Years later in another job, I woke from a dream about him. Walked into work only to find the new guy who was to start working with us was him. Freaky. Experience 15. The day after my dad died, I laid down and took a long nap. I was exhausted from the visitors and the questions and the reminders that he was gone, so I just wanted to escape for a while. During that nap, I dreamt a strange dream. I was back in the hospital again and I saw my dad surrounded by doctors and hooked to all kinds of wires and IVs. I cried and told them to leave him alone and that he had suffered enough, but my dad told me not to cry, and it was then that I noticed they were actually removing the wires and IVs from him. He stood up, which was something he hadn't done in a long time, and asked me to walk with him. He was wearing a long white robe and together we walked through a beautiful place next to a stream. I was telling him about how we had seen the Avengers recently and how his favorite superhero, the Hulk, had been in it. I laughed as I explained the scene where Hulk slams Loki around like a rag doll and said, "Oh my god. That would have been your favorite part. You would have died laughing." My dad said, "Poor choice of words," but he was smiling. I said, "Yeah, true. Sorry, Dad." His smile went away and then he looked at me seriously and said, "It's all right. You know, I didn't really want to die." And then I woke up. I had tears streaming down my face, and to this day I have never had another dream like that again. I've always been skeptical of the unknown, but sometimes I wonder if he was saying goodbye to me in the only way he could. I still miss him every day of my life. If I could have just one more dream with him, I would be so happy.
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.